And we're live. It's great to have you here. I got my party dress on today because you see, it's not only good news on the Letitia front, but it's some very good news here on the Trish Regan channel. We just crossed 800,000 subs, you guys. I mean, this is truly, truly incredible. I'm super excited. I'm so proud of what we've been able to do here. So it is wonderful. Maybe we should get like a little applause going. How about that? Can we do that? A little bit of applause for us. Anyway, tremendous news. And it is thanks to your dedication and everything that you guys have been doing to help promote the show. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. We've got so much news to get to today. And I am super excited. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Again, 800,000 is a big deal. But this is also a big deal. The director of the Federal Housing Authority, William Pulte, is coming out with his first sound in which he's saying, this woman committed mortgage fraud. In his estimation, the head of the FHA is saying Letitia James is guilty of this. This is exactly why we referred this case to one Pam Bondi. This is really something because, we saw the letter and the letter was pretty explosive. But he just came out with his first bit of sound in which he went really after her pretty hard, saying, this is not normal. This is not right. And by the way, don't forget, you guys, there's like a history of this. It wasn't just the Norfolk, Virginia house. There's a whole history in terms of the brownstone in New York, in terms of the house she bought with her father, claiming she was the wife. I mean, this is wild. Thank you, Krista. Appreciate your generosity. I'm going to get to your comment. Let's watch William Pulte, the head of the FHA, speaking about one Letitia James and his insistence that this is indeed what we think it is. He says it's mortgage fraud.
Recommended that the DOJ investigate New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud. The AG, Letitia James, has responded. We don't have the video, but here's the quote. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia resident. And prior to that, I indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement of their investigation. Bill, do you know why she said she was a resident of Virginia on the power of attorney, if in fact she wasn't?
Well, I know that we are mortgage experts, and we only refer things that we think are mortgage fraud, and we stand 100% behind the letter. I'll let the letter speak for itself. I do know, and I have seen some reports from that subject, from that subject's criminal defense lawyer, saying certain things. I'll leave it to the DOJ to correct various things. But again, when we see mortgage fraud, we are going to report it. When we see mortgage fraud, we are going to prosecute it within the confines of our duties. And we are not going to be intimidated by a subject's criminal defense lawyer. We are not going to be intimidated by a politician or just because you have an Esquire behind your name. We are not going to be intimidated by people. If we see mortgage fraud, we're going to do something about it. And I think that you're going to see us be taking this on in a big way. Mortgage fraud is a big problem. These companies are safe and sound, but where we see it, we are going to do something about it. And that subject's case is no different.
Well, what are the ramifications of this now that you've referred this for criminality to the DOJ?
Well, I would refer that to the DOJ. Again, as I say, we spend our days, we are mortgage experts. We are not politicians. I view this as an economic job. Obviously, the president can fire me at any time. So I guess in that way. But look, I look at this as an independent agency. We found the mortgage fraud, whether it be that particular subject or other subjects, and we work actively with the DOJ and different law enforcement.
Wow. Okay. I love how he keeps calling her the subject, because he doesn't even want to say her name. Letitia. Tish. Quite a name. Anyway, Letitia James was just basically called out in a massive way by the head of the FHA. Okay, why is this a big deal? It's such a big deal. It's like so much bigger a deal than anything she was trying to get on Donald Trump, in which case she had a private transaction, right, between Deutsche Bank, the bank that should know better, that decided to lend him money and made a ton of money doing so. Everybody was really happy, and they said they'd do that transaction again. But what about when you take advantage of federal taxpayers because you're lying on your tax forms? That's what Letitia James is being accused of doing, and that's the head of the FHA that said she's doing it. He's saying, I'm not a politician. I'm just, an economic person, and I know mortgage fraud when I see it. And this lady's got mortgage fraud. The subject. He doesn't want to say Letitia. Anyway, here's why it's a big deal, okay? FHA loans are issued by the federal government. So what does that mean? It means you and me, we're all taxpayers. We are all on the hook for any FHA loan. So when she's going out there and she's getting a FHA loan application, it's because the federal government is giving her money, lending her money so that she can buy the house. So if she's falsifying records on an FHA loan application, then you better believe William Pulte and his colleagues over at the FHA are going to pay attention. Because lying on an FHA loan application, well, let's see. Saying that your primary residence is actually, well, it's not your primary residence. So if you're lying on, that's a federal offense. That's a big deal. And the FHA does require you in your first 60 days to live in that quote-unquote primary residence. So as you heard Maria say, she said she didn't have the sound. She probably didn't play the sound because the sound's a little sketchy. It's hard to hear, but I'm going to play it anyway. I think we have some, if you're watching this on video. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for that. If you guys are watching live on YouTube, I see your comments in real time, all of it, and appreciate the congratulations. Kim Compton, thank you for that. But what I would say is it's a little tricky to hear because there's a lot of reverb in the room, but listen to this because it carries major, major implications. She's now being forced to have to talk about this. She didn't want to, right? She's saying, oh, it's all bogus. It's just a whole bunch of lies and it's retribution. But she is being forced to talk about it because people are like, this doesn't look good. Here's Tishy, baby.
As you know, we filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his family. We secured a $454 million judgment against him, which is on appeal. The case is on appeal. I have no idea when that case will be decided. This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia, but prior to that, I had indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. And in the mortgage application, I indicated that I would not live in Virginia and I was not a resident. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement for their investigation, when in reality, the power of attorney was never used to determine my eligibility for a mortgage for my niece for a home in the state of Virginia. My niece who has children, and because I am a good aunt, I wanted her to have a home.
Really? William Pulte's not buying that. By the way, lady, you are a lawyer. I realize you're not a very good one, but you are a lawyer, okay? Thereby, one would have to presume a better sort of standard, maybe, like maybe if you're not a lawyer and you make a mistake like that, whatever, but you're a lawyer. And this is not the only mistake you made. Oh, we'll go through them. We'll go through them all, okay, guys, because she's going to get up to 30 years for this. Do I think she'll get 30 years? I don't know. But the point is, she could face up to 30 years. That's the penalty here for violation of 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan. And it's so amazing. Like, it's so poetic and operatic and Shakespearean, considering that this is exactly what she was trying to go after one Donald Trump for. It's almost like she kind of had it in her head, right? Because maybe she'd done these things before, and so maybe it's some kind of guilty conscience coming into play. She thought, what can I get Donald on? I got to get him on something. She made that clear. She campaigned on it. And then she thought, oh, okay, well, I think he's overvaluing his properties. I think he's saying he has more square footage than he really has. And that's a threat to the whole system. No, it's not a whole threat to the whole system. You know why? It's a threat to Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank who decided to make the loan. Think about it, guys. When you go out and you take a second to like a home equity line of credit, right? Or you want to say, get a lower mortgage rate. And so what do? You go and you ask your bank, and the bank says, okay, well, let's look at the house because this is the collateral. And they're going to go and decide whether the house is worth a certain amount of money. Well, that's what Deutsche Bank did. And they said they'd do the trade over and over and over again all day long. It has nothing to do with the federal government, which is what she did. Okay, so let's go to her 2023. This is 2023, like the same year she's going after Trump. Think about that. Again, poetic, Shakespearean, operatic. I can't believe it. What a twist of fate. She's got the thing is her primary residence, okay? So she can say, oh, it's just a technicality. It's just a technicality. It's just a technicality that I said I was going to live here when I was really the AG over in New York. But what about this technicality? What about the fact that, like, for years, since 2001, she had this brownstone that she kept listing as a 4-floor unit because it qualified her for additional federal stuff. All about the free stuff, huh? You got to get all that stuff. Donald Trump's doing a private transaction between him and his bank. It's their business, whether it's 10,000 or 20,000 square feet at his apartment in New York, it's their business, okay? But when you are taking federal dollars, Letitia, guess what? It's our business. It's William Pulte's business. It's the world's business because you're putting the world at stake. That's why there's a distinct difference between these things. Oh, and then, of course, there's this little number because apparently you married your dad to help him get a house back in 1983. Come on. I mean, who does this? She's a lawyer. And she's falsifying things like the brownstone. She's falsifying things like she and her dad because they wanted to buy this house. Well, Donald Trump had a field day with that one. I mean, it's like little mini Ilhan Omar.
What's your thoughts on Letitia James, Director Pulte? According to him, Letitia James says that the alleged mortgage fraud was simply a mistake. I want to get your thoughts on that. She put down that her father was her husband in order, and this is very similar to, I guess, the false attacks they have on here.
Well, I don't know what it is currently, but Letitia James, who's the Attorney General of New York State, it seemed, I'm not involved in that at all. I know it's being handled by various groups, I guess, but it's major fraud. Mortgage documents and fraudulent everything. I think she said the father was her husband, which she had to have a husband, or so she chose her father, and she put it down. And she had didn't she sign in Virginia? Yet she said she lived in Virginia. Yet she's the New York State Attorney General. And she did that for tax reasons, so she could take advantage of taxes. And she had the wrong number of units. She had a much different number, which wouldn't have allowed her to qualify and scam the government. So I don't know. I think she's very bad for New York, but I really don't know too much about it. But I appreciate the question. Yes, thank you very much. Yes.
Mr. President, what's the for you to be convinced that there's no genocide?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You better believe she's bad for New York. I just threw a couple of your comments on there. Don, our friend Don Baca, who's always after you guys to like and to subscribe and do what you can to help the channel. We appreciate that from Don. Has a background in trading and also a background in law. And he's pointing out something. Let me see if I can pull that back up, Don, because you had a good point about, in other words, she's still liable, if you would. Gary Hammers, thank you so much. I know that the subs just keep growing. It's absolutely incredible. But you had a really good point that, in other words, she's still, you still have to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's. And really and truly, as a lawyer herself, she's not going to be able to get away with saying, oh, I didn't know. And someone else, I think, had a very good point about why was she buying this house for her niece and then buying it herself? Like, why couldn't she have co-signed or done something like that? Maybe she was going to get a better rate. Who knows? But I don't even want to speculate. I don't even care. I think the woman is probably No, I know she's corrupt. I know she's corrupt because of what she did. I mean, let's face it. And by the way, the media is totally turning on her. We were talking about that yesterday. I mean, the media. I mean, when you lose the liberal media, Letitia, baby, I don't think I know what to tell you. I mean, they can't stand you now. This is her new blow. I mean, they don't like her one single bit any more than any of us do, because they realize she's going to absorb all their tax money to actually fight this thing. She wants the $10 million that New York has set aside in legal funds. She's trying to actually use that. And so all of a sudden there's this groundswell against Letitia James. I'm like, finally, like, why did it have to take this long? Here's the New York Magazine. Letitia James is caught in a war of her own making, they write. And this is the direct quote. This is not me saying this, because you know I'd say this, but this is New York Magazine. So when you, again, are losing New York Magazine, and you're even losing the Wall Street Journal, which, you know, that one's a little bit squishy because they tend to be more conservative than they are liberal, and they understood all that was wrong with this case from the beginning as a financial publication. But lately, they're like kind of anti-Trump. So, you know, I consider that a score. They can't stand her either. They write in New York Magazine, it's a fact beyond reasonable dispute that Letitia James weaponized her official power as New York's Attorney General to pursue Donald Trump for political purposes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, then before we even talk about mortgages, shouldn't we talk about weaponizing your political power? Like, what kind of AG is she? Why do we have AGs in the state of New York or in the state of anywhere that are actually weaponizing their political power? This is what she did from the beginning. She ran on this. That's how wrong it is. And then she tried to bankrupt the guy on a whole bunch of bogus charges. But for her own political gain. It reminds me of when I was covering the horrible Duke lacrosse story. Remember that, where they were going after those poor kids and accusing those kids, and it was Mike Nifong, the DA down there. You know, he had a chip on his shoulder. He didn't get into Duke University himself, and he thought he'd go after those Duke kids after they were falsely accused. And I knew it. Like, I just knew it. It's one of those things, like, at the time I was at CBS Evening News, so I'm playing the full-on straight reporter, but man, did I know it. It's like I just felt it. Anyway, it kind of reminds me of that. Different situation, obviously, but it's somebody trying to use something, a story, make something up for their own political gain. He was eventually thrown out, disbarred, and that's what needs to happen with Letitia. But they may not have to wait for the weaponization of her office, because she's going to get thrown out because of this nasty situation, this horrible situation with her mortgage fraud du jour. Again, the New York Magazine writes that, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, he's got over $500 million. That's $500 million, including mounting interest, that the judge, another one that ought to be thrown out, Arthur Engoron, with his own biases, decided to hit Donald Trump with. But during the trial, they write, James made a series of wildly inappropriate out-of-court statements that would ordinarily get a prosecutor fired. At one point, she publicly branded Trump and his family members as liars as they were testifying. I mean, it was so bad, you guys. It was so bad. And you had this lousy judge with this stupid verdict, and it is in the Court of Appeals right now. But don't forget, like, the reason why this whole case was so stupid, and they say it here, is because there were no victims. The purported victims were multi-billion-dollar banks that were repaid in full on their loans to the Trump Organization and made millions of dollars in profits through interest payments. Unsurprisingly, a New York Appellate Court panel voiced pointed skepticism of James's victimless case and seems poised to either substantially reduce the verdict or throw it out. Of course they will.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where, and where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
I know you guys have seen this before, and I know that we've talked about a lot of this before, but this is a big deal. And again, today, it's an especially big deal because William Pulte, head of FHA, I mean, he put it in a letter, right? But to come out on camera and say what he did, and he's saying, look, I'm not a really political person. I get it. Like, the president can fire me if he wants, but this isn't politics. This is just economics. We can't have people taking advantage of the Federal Housing Authority. I mean, wow. Okay, wow. And that is what she was trying to do. This is twisted, messed up stuff. And now the grand jury has issued subpoenas and people are going to have to talk. And you know what? This lady's going down. She's going to get up to 30 years. But even before that, and we've talked about this before too, but this is important, okay? Because she wants the $10 million. She has no money. Like Letitia's got no real money, right? Like how's she gonna pay for her legal defense? Well, maybe she can raise some political funds, do a few more little coffees there in New York City, see if somebody will cough up the money for her fancy schmancy Hunter Biden attorney. Abby Lowell. He's representing her. He charges a lot of money. And guess what? She thinks she can charge the taxpayers of New York. And that is not going to work. It's another thing that even New York Magazine brought up. Bad idea, they say. In fact, actually, they go further. They call it a dreadful idea. By dragging the AG's office into her personal mess, James has made some of her colleagues into potential witnesses and subjected them to subpoenas. So they're saying that basically she's putting the whole system on the line. James, they write, has again displayed dubious ethical instincts in her response to the pending inquiry. She has inexplicably chosen to use the resources of her public office to respond to this investigation. I mean, I can't believe that this woman was ever elected to anything. She is bad news, you guys, bad news. But sweet justice, guess what? Remember how she said that Donald Trump was going to have to maybe sell some of his assets if he didn't have the money to cover things? I think, Tishy, baby, you know what? You're going to actually have to sell some of your little assets. Maybe that brownstone in Brooklyn, it should be worth something now, to cover your expensive lawyer, because GOP taxpayers in New York, they don't want it. And they're making it very clear. You can't touch that money.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Oh, this is going to be so good. It's going to be really good, okay? I mean, I'm not a vindictive person. You know that. I'm actually a really nice person. But when I see bad people doing bad things, I really like this sense of justice that we're getting. It's high time, right? It's high time. It's so absolutely positively deserved right now. And you know what else I think is kind of deserved is this amazing growth we've seen on this channel. And I'm so excited for it. 800,000 subs on Memorial Day. It's so weird. It keeps happening on holidays. We hit 500,000 subs on Christmas Day, and then 800,000 on Memorial Day. And Leslie, thank you so much. So guys, Leslie, we have our crowd of regulars, and we're always welcoming new people, but Leslie has been really following this show from like the first night I ever did it in my study. And she's been just such a wonderful supporter. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really, really do appreciate it. And I appreciate that you're here. And to all of you that are here every single day, we really do have a big show, though. So much to get to. And I think we get to celebrate a little bit at the end, because it is really and truly just amazing, right? What has happened and all that is going down. Look, I do think that there's, in addition to one Letitia James, a lot more to get to, because I want to talk about, for example, what's going on at the NSC. And I want to dig in a little bit more to what's happening there. We're seeing a huge purge at the NSC. I think we're also seeing a responsiveness to Donald Trump that is unlike anything that we really have ever seen before. You look at the markets, for example, today, and we are up and away. Take a look at this news right here. We've got the stock market. Actually, last I checked, we were up nearly 600. So I want to make sure that this data is fresh for you. I'm telling you, investors are really, really, really sort of buying into what the future is right here. And it's an exciting time. Wow. We need to change this, ladies and gentlemen. We are up. Look at that. Nearly 700 points on the Dow right now. The Dow gaining nearly 700 points, 42,293. Why? Because one, Donald Trump has indicated a willingness to work with Europe. They were supposed to have that June 1st tariff deadline, and they called him up. And he said, okay, I'll work with you. All right. So again, making a deal. We're getting closer to a deal with Europe on tariffs. And then two, consumer confidence. I mean, it blew me away. It didn't blow me away. I'll tell you, I think that people feel pretty good about things right now. And there was like a little rough period. And then all of a sudden, they saw egg prices coming down, and they saw grocery prices coming down, and they saw the stock market going up. And what do you know? Consumer confidence is back with a bang. And so people love this. Take a look at Donald Trump talking today about his discussion with Ursula von, the woman who runs the EU. And she asked for an extension on the tariff deal. And he said, okay.
She just called me, as you know, and she asked for an extension on the June 1st date. And she said she wants to get down to serious negotiation because I've told you specifically, but I told anybody that would listen, they have to do that. And we had a very nice call, and I agreed to move it. I believe June 9th would be, July 9th would be the date. That was the date she requested. Could we move it from June 1st to July 9th? And I agreed to do that, and that she said we will rapidly get together and see if we can work something out.
Wow. So they're working it out, okay? So we've got till July 9th or so. I really need to change this graphic. Look at this. We're up nearly 700 points. This is amazing. I mean, what are the Democrats going to do now? I mean, he's actually winning. Right? He's actually winning. He's been talking about the stock market. Letitia wants to sue him for that, believe it or not, because maybe 5-6 weeks ago he came out and he put a True Social post out when things were really dark and bad. And he's like, just buy stocks. And then the market's been rallying ever since. So somehow that's insider trading in her mind. Of course, I guess she didn't get the part in law school where they told you that insider trading is when it's inside information and you don't broadcast it to the world like he did on social media. But anyway, here he is over in Saudi Arabia. He said it in the Oval Office. He's like, buy stocks. This is like a rocket ship. And then he said it again last week in Saudi Arabia. Take a listen.
Amazing what a rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, it's a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. But it's going to go a lot higher. You see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in.
These are coming in, and we're going to have more investment. And you know what? That begets more good stuff. So it's win, 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 win. If you haven't seen it by now, I have a financial research company, and we're doing really well, all right? This is actually a little bit outdated, but take a look at those portfolios. The income builder portfolio is all about making sure that you can retire one day. Dividend stocks there. American Resilience is all about capturing that growth. Inflation protection is a little bit like that income builder portfolio. And let me just point out, more good stuff is coming. So he's saying, listen, you should be investing. I can't stress that enough. you do need to be investing. So if nothing else, you know what you need to do? Just go to 76research.com, use code word dollar so that you at least are getting the basic report. We have a lot of great ideas in there. We got something coming out on Bitcoin pretty soon again, because there's a big Bitcoin conference going on in Vegas. And I know, Dawn, you hate it, but I'm telling you, it's part of the future. Like the tokenization that's going on, and when you look at the technology behind all of this, I actually think, I don't believe in these meme coins. They're like stickers to me, you know, when kids used to trade stickers, but the technology on some of these blockchains are pretty incredible. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day you start seeing actual companies being traded on these blockchains. I digress, but you know, there's a lot there, and I encourage you to do the research and to take a look at us over at 76research.com. But moving on to more good news, I would say this, a big part of what you're seeing in the stock market today, it was evidenced by polls recently, right? I mean, because I think people are starting to buy into this. They like the fact that Donald Trump is sticking up for them. They don't like the fact that AOC is sticking up for people who may be members of gangs, and the Trump administration wants deported. So you're seeing this shift. Consumer confidence coming in today at a tremendous number, up 12.3 points from where it was last month, and way outpacing what people thought. I think analysts were looking for around 86, and we came in around 98, so like huge consumer confidence surge. All of this is because people believe in what this administration is doing. So that's bad news for the Democrats, right? Really bad news for the Democrats, and according to the New York Times, they're actually like sweating bullets. They're sweating bullets. I mean, I read something today where Rahm Emanuel, remember him from Chicago and Obama? Rahm Emanuel is like, the Democrat Party is too woke. I'm like, excuse me, Rahm? That's you? Yeah, well, that's all they got right now, right? So they're trying to figure out, how do we get back all these people we lost, including all the young men? They're going to spend $20 million. I'm going to tell them it's not enough, because you have ostracized men and young men. You've told them over and over again, they're the problem. It's the white man that's the problem, right? It's the cops that are the problem. It's the working man that's the problem. And you know what? They're like, fine. You think we're the problem? We don't need to have any part of you. And we're not going to have any part of you. And so this is what the party is going through. There's this like magnification of America right now, and the Democrats don't know what to do about it. But, you know, look, they're doubling down on stupid. Just watch that ABC morning show, The View, and you'll see it. Here's Joy Behar trying to drive a wedge in the country again, saying that she hates MAGA supporters so much that if she was like dying and there was a MAGA person in the room that could save her, she'd die.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't even let him give me a Heimlich maneuver. Yeah. That's how little I feel about people. I don't know.
Well, and a MAGA supporter is like
calling you right now.
I got it.
Somebody's.
I fixed
it. Tell that MAGA man, leave you alone.
I'm not sleeping with you anymore.
I mean, it's a horrible show. It needs to come off the air. We can talk about Disney tomorrow some more, but gosh, I mean, they're part of the problem, right? So you have this media that doesn't quite know what to do because, by the way, they were so involved in the cover-up of the Joe Biden health scandal, and now they're still clinging to these ideals. Meanwhile, you get this new crop of people, whether it be AOC or Jasmine Crockett, salivating at their opportunity to take down Trump. And it's like, guys, you don't get it. People don't want him taken down. Jasmine?
So long as we end up taking the House, which I fully anticipate that we will do, and we are going to work hard to obviously help our Senate colleagues as well, then as someone who serves on the Oversight Committee and hopes to lead the Oversight Committee, I can guarantee you that we will do what we are supposed to do as constitutionally sworn members of the House, which means that we will conduct oversight. That means that we will investigate. We will look at whether or not this president himself has violated the emoluments clause as it relates to, say, such things as getting a $400 million plane from the Qataris. We also will make sure that we're looking into all these business deals that they have going on. I mean, think about it this way, Alex, they were going after Hunter because he sat on a board. think about how much money they are raking in, whether we're talking about the next golf resort that they're setting up in Qatar, or whether we're talking about them leveling Gaza, as they've talked about, and talked about how it would be great beachfront property. Because let me tell you, there is no shortage of things for us to dig into and determine whether or not there have been not only violations of the law, but definitely violations of our Constitution as a whole.
Well, it would be great beachfront property, right? As for the other stuff, look, I've said this before. I said this back in 2016. The difference between Donald Trump and any other president that we had in recent history is the guy runs a business, like a really big international business. And you can't exactly just turn the business off just because you're president. No, you turn it over to your kids. And so sure, it presents for some stickier issues, don't get me wrong, but you can't shut down the business. And so it's a very different situation than, say, Hunter Biden, who had no business, right? Suddenly getting gigs to the tune of $600K a year to sit on a board for Burisma, a now defunct natural gas energy company, while Daddy, as Vice President of the United States, was in charge of Ukraine energy policy. That's completely different than Eric Trump, who is the CEO of his family's company that has business dealings all over the world and cannot shut down just because Dad became president. I mean, it's just a different animal entirely. We're not looking at oranges to oranges. Hunter did bad stuff. Very different situation with the Trump family. Mass purge going on that we've got to talk about there at the NSC. And you know what? It had to happen. Or shall I say, people being escorted out, being put on leaves of absence, because I don't know how the firing thing's going these days, but they want them out, okay, at the NSC. And so there were over 100 people this weekend that were fired. Well, again, I have to be careful with the terminology. They were put on leave. We don't want you anymore at the National Security Council. So this is a big move from Donald Trump. Big move. And again, I think it needed to happen. It needed to happen because, you see, he's been pretty upset about the intel or the lack of intel or the kind of intel he's been getting. Don't forget, Mike Waltz was there. And then Mike Waltz moved over to become the UN ambassador. Mike Waltz was the one who had created that list on Signalgate, and it became a big issue. And so then Marco Rubio took over. He's doing like double time. He's Secretary of State and he's running the NSC. And he's saying he doesn't need all these people. So he's doing a total restructuring. This is a very big deal, because when you talk about draining the swamp or getting rid of deep state and getting rid of these biases that have been built in because they've been there, these people have been there for decades and they have their way of doing things, which I guarantee you is very different than the Trump way of doing things. You know what? Things have to change. And this may explain, by the way, why the president has not been too thrilled about getting his NSC briefing every day, something that Susan Rice, left over from the Obama administration, couldn't handle. She found out this one and she was apoplectic. Watch.
It's been recently reported, David, that the president of the United States, who's been in office well over 100 days now, has only received the presidential daily briefing, the most important, highly classified daily intelligence briefing, some 12 times, some 12 days of his 100 plus days in office. What is he doing if he's not reading the PDB? And I hate to say this, you could say it about the airplane, you could say it about Signalgate, you could say it about so many different things. But if any other president had refused or opted not to receive the presidential daily briefing from the intelligence community on a regular basis, it would be a huge scandal with massive investigations in Congress and huge speculation that the president is not playing with a full deck. That's a key part of the job.
Okay, he's not playing with a full deck because he doesn't want to deal with your mumbo jumbo and like your old team that's still sitting around there in the White House trying to infiltrate his ideas. No, let me tell you, and I'm just going to tell you this, and I know this from personal experience. He'll pick up the phone and he'll call someone. He'll call the actual people involved because he's like, I don't want to get it filtered through all of these people with all of their biases. I just want to hear it direct. That's what you call, in the academia world, primary sourcing, right? Donald Trump wants primary sources. He doesn't want to hear it from 5 people down who have spun it and spun it and spun it because maybe it's helping this one or that one or somebody else along the way or this corporation or that one. No. He just wants the truth and only the truth. And the only way you get the truth is to go straight to the horse's mouth. So he'd much rather pick up the phone. Remember when they freaked out because he was talking to the North Korean leader? He's like, yeah, of course I want to talk to him. I would rather be talking directly to him than have everybody else around me doing the talking. He got rid of the head of the NSA, don't forget, Timothy Howe. He got rid of the head of the NSA's sidekick, Wendy Noble. They were seen as people that were maybe a little too aligned with the previous administration, having been appointed by Milley. Now, they would say, look, we're career professionals. We're not really biased in that way. But again, this is a whole different administration, right? A whole different team, and they've got a whole different agenda. And they want people that are with them, that buy into that agenda. And I don't think a lot of people within the so-called NSC or the deep state really do, right? There's an agenda that's been there for a while. So this comes on the heels of the NSA firings. And I would not be surprised if we see a few more. Right, a few more. We know Laura Loomer talks to the president a lot, and she kind of has a view on a lot of these NSC people. She said as much to Steven Crowder on his podcast recently, where she was like, I want to vet people, right? Like, we need to vet all of these people. We need to know, are they really on the team or are they not? What do they really think about these various issues, internationally speaking? And if you're not on Team MAGA, if you're not all about the president's agenda, not that you can't have diversity of opinion. I'll say that. You know what? I welcome diversity of opinion. I think he certainly welcomes diversity of opinion. However, when push comes to shove and you need to get stuff done, you need the people that are actually on your team. I mean, think about Biden. I mean, clearly he had people on his team, not on America's team, but clearly on his team. I mean, they were running and doing all kinds of bidding. And now they're going to pay the price. There's going to be a big investigation now, as there should be, because you had so many enablers there. The press people, Jen Psaki, who doesn't like some of what's come out, saying it's being exaggerated. I mean, KJP, Anthony Blinken. Oh, what about the wifey? Right? What about Lady Macbeth? She sort of seemed that way. Remember after the debate? The debate that was the tragedy that sealed his fate. He was awful. And she got up on stage and said this.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lied! Yes.
So I have a feeling that Jill Biden and Hunter Biden may come into the view here, along with all the members of the administration that were constantly covering this one up. And it was a cover-up. I mean, Jake Tapper participated in the cover-up. That's the irony, right? He's the guy writing the book, but fine. Like, let him write the book, because it probably wouldn't have had the same weight coming from a conservative. You probably needed to have a liberal come out and say all this in order for people to really take it seriously enough. And he has said now on record, on Piers Morgan's show, that this is worse than Watergate. I mean, a cover-up worse than Watergate. That's what was going on in the White House. I'm telling you, heads are going to roll. And pardons are going to become null and void. Watch Jake.
This brings me to your conclusion, which said Joe Biden is not Richard Nixon. The hiding and the cover-up of his deterioration is not Watergate. I'm not entirely sure I agree, Jake, with that conclusion. Yeah,
Well,
I'm not entirely sure.
The next line is it is an entirely separate scandal. It is a scandal.
Yes.
It is without question, and maybe even worse than Watergate in some ways.
Right.
Because Richard Nixon was in control of his faculties when he wasn't drinking, and the idea that we don't mean to exonerate. The only reason that we have the Watergate thing is there because we quote Archibald Cox, who was a Watergate investigator, talking about how powerful the presidency is and how presidents get surrounded by people who have a vested interest in keeping that president propped up. So that's the only reason we invoke Watergate, is just to make clear, like, it's not Watergate. Right. This is an entirely separate scandal. Maybe even worse. Maybe even worse.
Yeah, I think arguably it is worse, actually.
Yeah. Worse. Okay? Worse. Worse in that you had somebody in office, and I'm going to show you my favorite tape here. He's clearly struggling. He says, I shouldn't be allowing you to ask questions.
I'll get in trouble.
I'll get in trouble. Like, what do you mean you'll get in trouble? And look at his face.
Super Tuesday said, do you have a message for voters? Thanks, come on.
This is a man that is struggling. As these reporters shout out questions to him, he looks like he's ready to pass out. He's just staring into the camera. I mean, we could play these things all day long, right? We won't, but we could. And the point is, the reason this is worse than Watergate is because you had a guy in there who wasn't capable of doing the job that everybody just kept propping up and wasn't even doing the job. What do you think the auto pen was? Hundreds and hundreds of auto pen signatures. Well, now that's all going to come up for debate. So we got to figure out who was enabling him. We got to figure out how the heck it is that a doctor, I mean, the guy should have the best medical care in the world, right? He's the president of the United States. Any which way he slices, this is not looking good. One, he has a doctor that either lied and didn't tell America the truth, or two, he's getting pretty, excuse my French, crappy medical care. Okay? Like, it's one of the two. Either way, not good. Not good for America that you have somebody who can't actually do the job, and America doesn't know who the heck is the auto pen or who the heck they actually elected. We need to get to the bottom of this, and you know what? We will. Believe me, this is going to become the biggest scandal. Watch, James Comer's already on it.
No, they just talked to Joe Biden, and he was tip-top. He was in great physical condition. He was at the top of his game. Now they're coming back. We didn't know anything. There were gatekeepers. They wouldn't let us speak with Joe Biden. And the more that comes out, the easier it's going to be to get to the truth.
You better believe it. Like, that's what I'm saying. So while it's sort of funny that Jake Tapper's the one doing the book because he was part of the cover-up, in a way it's kind of good, because if it were, say, a conservative writing that book, they would not take it as seriously. So this just opens the floodgates, you guys, for the Republicans to say what went down. And how do we make sure that that never, ever, ever actually happens again? Right? And DOJ is really busy. They got a case in Chicago I want to tell you about. One of my former colleagues at Fox, Harmeet Dillon, who is now actually running the Civil Rights Division. She's in charge of this, and wow, like she's going to blow it up. But before I get to that, I just wanted to mention gold down today. We've been talking, of course, about the markets being up. We're looking at tremendous upside right now in the markets. Division is now investigating Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, because Brandon Johnson apparently only wants to hire people that look like him. And, well, that would be a violation of the Constitution, now wouldn't it? You can't actually discriminate against somebody because of race. And if you're not hiring somebody because they're not the skin color you want, oh gosh darn it, that would be flat out discrimination, now wouldn't it, Brandon?
Detractors that will push back on me and say, the only thing that the mayor talks about is the hiring of black people. No, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else. We are the most generous people on the planet. I don't know too many cultures that have play cousins. That's how generous we are. We just make somebody a family member, right? That's just how we are. And so business and economic neighborhood development, the deputy mayor is a black woman. Department of Planning and Development is a black woman. Infrastructure deputy mayor is a black woman. Chief Operations Officer is a black man. Budget director is a black woman. Senior advisor is a black man. And I'm laying that out because when you ask how do we ensure that our people get a chance to grow their business?
Well, we hire our own. I guess that's his message. Except that message would put you in direct violation of the U.S. Constitution. So that did not go unheard by one Harmeet Dillon, who's now head of the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ. And this is like a whole new Civil Rights Division. I mean, think about what they used to use the Civil Rights Division for. They'd be applauding that all day long, forgetting, of course, that it is illegal what he's talking about doing if he's, in fact, only hiring people because of their skin color. So Harmeet is turning it all on its head. In fact, half the people in the Civil Rights Division now are leaving. According to a new article in the Wall Street Journal today, lovely piece on her in the Wall Street Journal, hundreds of people have left the Civil Rights Division on their own because they don't like the kind of civil rights that she's going after. By the way, she herself is Indian American. All right, interesting. All right, we got a lot of Indian Americans, do we not? Rising up in the Republican Party. But it's neither here nor there. I just point it out because it's worth knowing. It's not like she's some blonde, blue-eyed girl coming in and saying, no, this is Harmeet Dillon. But she wants what's right for the country. And you know what's right? To be a colorblind society, which means you can't do what Brandon's trying to do, right? Here, I want to go to Harmeet. She's listening to a soundbite from Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. You heard what he said there, and then he goes on about how much he hates Trump, of course. You know, this is their TDS on steroids. And listen to what she says in response.
You know, the president's animus towards women, people of color, working people, we have always known who he has been. This is not a surprise. He's a monster, period. We have the most diverse administration in the history of Chicago, and he is threatened by that. You can tell when someone is fearful is because they act out. We have a president that is screaming and having tantrums right now because we have an administration that reflects the city of Chicago, but he would much rather have administrations that reflect the country club.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you told me at the top of this interview that it was your decision to launch this investigation. Did President Trump tell you to go after Chicago for this?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to the president recently, and he asked me to do this job, and I'm doing this job. And this job requires a focus on government officials who blatantly discriminate on the basis of race, because that's illegal. And so the mayor lashing out like he's in a playground, calling him the president a monster and all of that, classic deflection. You know, I think he is stressed and worried, and so are the newspapers in Chicago calling him out for it, that he's messed up because he did what, by the way, I think this is happening in Atlanta. You see a lot of cities where government contracts have been explicitly handed out on the basis of race for decades. And that little game of racial spoils is over. It's un-American and it's illegal, and we're going to stop it at the Department of Justice.
So when you launch an investigation like this, it does cost the taxpayers of Chicago money, right? In other words, Brandon Johnson's decision to hire on the basis of race, as you viewed it when you saw that video, that now they have to mount a legal defense against the Justice Department. So Brandon Johnson is costing the city money through his actions. He's
costing the city money. He's by the way, not just to respond to our investigation, but also every person who did not get a job where he explicitly called out his racial preferences.
Yeah,
they have private claims. I'm sure they're all racing to plaintiffs' lawyers to assert their claims. against the city. It's the kind of case that any good employment lawyer, like I've been before I took this job, loves to hear that evidence out there on the record. And so it's unfortunate for the city, but overall, it's going to be a good thing for the city when they stop these racial preferences, because when a city hires with consideration of everyone in the applicant pool, they're going to get more and better candidates. And I think that's overall going to be a great thing for the taxpayers in Illinois and the city of Chicago. So
you better believe it, right? I mean, think about this. So you now have a DOJ civil rights division that has been turned on its head. I'm going to quote the Wall Street Journal, who did a very nice article on her today. Quote, in her first weeks on the job, Dillon has redeployed the division from its traditional civil rights priorities to one advancing a MAGA agenda. So far, that has meant fighting diversity initiatives, transgender rights, and wokeness, while advocating for the rights of religious groups, gun owners, and everyday Americans, right? Because why does it matter what the color of your skin is? Why is he sitting there saying, well, we got this one, this one, this one. Oh, and by the way, the reason we have these people is because I think they're better because they're going to look out for more people. I mean, come on. Quote, in prior Republican administrations, little attempt was made to actually harness the civil rights division for affirmative policy change, Dillon said last week. We are taking the mandate of the voters and we're implementing that on our policy priorities. Great. Because what are we if we're not a meritocracy here in the United States of America? You know, the American dream is the American dream for a reason. The reason why people come here from all over the world and they want a shot at a better life is for that American dream. But when you start selecting based on the color of someone's skin, their sexual preferences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you get away from the greatness that is our country, right? Because you just want the best person for the job, for goodness sakes. Who cares about the rest of it? Who cares? Honestly, like you may as well just turn yourselves into Europe. Europe, where it's a travesty. I was traveling recently in Italy, and I was so saddened to see how many tremendously smart, capable people couldn't get jobs. I spoke to a woman, she was in her early 30s. She was a manicurist. I had gone in to get my nails done, and she was telling me she made about €6 an hour and lived at home with her family still. And she said it's the same with all the men, like just to have a job is big. By the way, totally fluent in English, well educated. And she wants to work, but she can't. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of socialism hangover. And you see it in Italy, and you see it in France. And look, we don't want to be Europe, okay? I'm sorry. We're not going to give that position to China. We're the world's #1 economy for a reason, because we're a meritocracy. Capitalism, meritocracy, these are things that go hand in hand, and Harmeet Dillon knows that. So watch out, Chicago. Watch out, Brandon Johnson. She's coming for you, and it's going to be great. Speaking of Europe, speaking of France, did you guys see over the weekend this little number with Brigitte Macron and her husband Emmanuel? There's a really big May-December there. He's 25 years younger. And it's not pretty. So this came out. They're getting out of a plane, and it's real. It's totally real. I wouldn't show you to you if it wasn't, or I would tell you, this is a joke. So it's totally real. And you see her hit him in the face. Brigitte. I don't know what to say. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I kind of do know what to say. I actually have a few different theories on this, including the fact that it's just disgusting that he's 25 years younger than her, but whatever. Okay, here is Brigitte socking it to the hubby. They're walking down and so people are is this them? Are they just getting a little spicy in their relationship? Or as I said, is this a French thing? She's getting Frenchy with Macron? Or is there something else? Is she the power one? He says, oh, it's nothing. Emmanuel Macron says video of his wife pushing him shows they were just joking around. Nothing to see here. But it does bring up the question of what's the deal with that marriage anyway? Okay, gosh, I think I'm a pretty accepting person and pretty libertarian in this sense, but it's just weird. Like, I mean, look, Melania Trump, and like, look, this is just biology, people, okay? A woman has a certain clock, a man doesn't. A woman is looking for a protector, a man is looking for somebody to have children with, okay? Like, so this is just sort of how the world is set up. This is biology and science and hormones. And so I think as a society, we can look at, say, the May-December between like a Melania and Trump and say, okay, well, we get that, right? But when you look at this one, there's something that like instinctually does not make sense. She picked him up out of a classroom. She was his former drama teacher, his former English teacher. And she's like a lot older. I mean, he was a kid. They're saying, well, he was 15. Legal age of consent, what do you know? In France, this is the New York Post writing on it today, when video surfaced Monday morning of Brigitte Macron appearing to forcefully shove the face of her husband, French President Emmanuel Macron, as they arrived in Vietnam. The shocking moment was just the latest in a relationship that has been fraught with scandal. And let's just say the scandal stems from the fact that she was his teacher when he was a kid, okay? The head of state, just 15 years old when he took up with Brigitte. Back then, Madame Brigitte Azier, a 39-year-old high school teacher at a Catholic school where he was also a classmate. It gets weird, guys. It gets weird. Of her eldest daughter. She had 3 kids. She was married with 3 kids, and she takes up with this 15-year-old little boy. Oh, but they said he was so mature. He had the maturity of a 25-year-old, his ex-sports teacher said, apparently, to Bloomberg. Okay, so that's reason enough. Oh, well, he seems like he's a 25-year-old. Of course, she's still 39. Look at him, Emmanuel Macron. He is a 4th there in the 2nd row. You see him smiling to camera, and she thought, well, isn't he a cutie? I mean, it's weird, okay? Like, I'm sorry, I just don't get the French. This one's really, really weird. So he was a good student. She winds up taking up with him. It was a big like scandal in town, obviously. Even for the French, it was kind of a big deal. But you wonder, like, was this all about finding the next president of France, grooming the next president of France? And she found him, albeit he was 15. So she's a teacher that helped him with the teachers' unions. And, fast forward, they get married. She had kind of a lengthy, brutal divorce. They get married. He's 29, she's 54. What do you think? I actually want to go to your comments on this one. I just don't get this one. Really. Jailbait. Someone saying Macron is a cute small man. He was a kid. Like, it's just wrong, right? Like, do we not have moral principles? What is going on? I got to tell you, weird stuff. Hopefully the audio is okay. I see some comments on the audio, but maybe it should be working. Hopefully we're all good on the audio. You can't hear the audio clips. That's strange. All right, we'll take a look at that later on. But good to see you all here. And I know you mommy issues. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I mean, I don't really get the Jordan Hudson coach thing either, Bill Belichick. But like, I might get it a little bit better than this one, right? Like, 'cause this one is weird. The Macrons are a little weird. And so I rest my case. We never, ever, ever want to be France, all right? Really important that we stay strong as the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen.